We hope that this webinar highlighting how 3 different community colleges are responding to the call of the Cornerstone Initiative to create a common experience for their first-year students and to create coherent pathways through their general education curricula. We'll provide ideas and inspiration for all of you. Thank you so much for your interest. Again, and if as you have questions, please pose them to us using the Q&A button that you see on the bottom of your screen. And as I had mentioned previously, I'll be putting a number of links for your reference in the chat. So I'll first turn to Ted at Austin Community College for him to provide a very quick description of what he has been doing in collaboration with his colleagues to launch what they refer to as the Great Questions Seminar, and now the Great Questions Pathway. So Ted, can you just quickly describe for us GQS, the GQ pathway, and how you and your colleagues settled on the design for the first year seminar in particular?
Sure. So we've got a humanities course, Humanities 1301, Prehistory of the Renaissance. And what we've done is we've redesigned that course as a first year seminar focused on transformative texts that meets our college's student success course mandate, which is required of every student who has fewer than 12 successful credit hours. It's a core text course with a common syllabus that ranges a wide diversity of texts. We read epic poetry, we read philosophy, we spend time with classical mathematics, we read religious texts from around the globe, poetry from all corners of the earth. And it's a class that focuses on discussion centered through the lens of student-centered study questions. So asking students to consider not just the text as such, but the text in its relation and conversation with their own lives. And so we work hard to try to create study questions which get students to understand the relevance of that text for their lives today. And embedded in the course are learning objectives and outcomes that focus students on college readiness as well. So our writing assignments, while they're based on core texts, are also developing skills that are associated with college readiness and success in other courses as well. So it's become a class that's sort of interdisciplinary in nature, but it's also a really wonderful preparation for any major. And currently we fulfill the college student success course mandate, so that it can serve that function in any degree plan, but we're now formally a part of many degree plans, including in vocational degree plans like computer information technology and business administration. And then there are some classes where we'll have 20% of the class might be business administration students, and talking with folks who are liberal arts intended on transferring to another institution. And it's a wonderful experience in a community college classroom to have that diversity of perspective and disciplinary interest in discussing texts that are predate all of the disciplines.
So Ted, you went from something, a handful of students in the pilot section, I think 4 years ago, to now over 600 annually. And that's a big jump. And so, of course, having this version of the student success seminar written into so many of your degree plans has made a difference in terms of students being being eligible to take it to meet this institution-wide mandate. But it also has meant that there's a lot of buy-in that's necessary among faculty, right? So that you have the staffing strength to teach this at the scale that you're doing. It also means that you have to be thinking about how to onboard adjunct instructors on a regular basis to help them feel prepared to teach this text alongside the tenure track faculty. And so, all of this is being done in the context where, you made the choice to have a pretty uniform syllabus across all sections, right? That was sort of an internal decision that you had made because you thought this was the sort of the most consistent, this was the most straightforward way to kind of maintain the integrity of the vision that you have for the Great Questions seminar. So can you tell us a little bit about, how that process of devising and designing the syllabus, working with your colleagues to agree on the readings and agree on expectations week to week on what you want to be teaching collectively, and then, the structures you put in place between your summer institute and your ongoing academic year workshops to make sure that all the instructors are on the same page and are sort of, feel prepared, regardless of their disciplinary background to teach in the seminar.
Yeah, so our project is pretty unique in that it does focus on a common syllabus where, I mean, it's so common that if you're in the fourth week of class, we are literally on the same page. So there's so that's pretty different. I think one of the reasons why we chose that approach is because we needed to fulfill the student success course mandate. So this course needed to have a great deal of uniformity across all of the sections so that we could document that this does address the learning objectives of the broad student success course mandate. So that's one reason. One of the things that I think has been sort of unexpected about the common syllabus is how it has helped build community amongst Great Questions faculty. That when we are all on the same page every week, in our faculty meetings, we get to discuss the text themselves. So, if I pass a colleague in the halls and we're doing, Proposition 47 of Euclid's geometry, I have that to talk about with them because we've just both come out of classes doing that. So it helps build a sense of community amongst the faculty as well. I mean, I think that's for community college faculty, I think understand that it's really difficult to well, I mean, maybe my experience is not representative, but at a huge place like ACC, unless the colleague's office is on the hall of mine, I don't usually see them except for perhaps at department meetings, which are sort of few and far between. And building a community of faculty is something that Great Questions has been really wonderful at doing, and in part through our training efforts too. We've trained about 100 faculty members to teach the class, some of who go on to teach this Great Questions seminar, but others of whom have done course redesigns of course curriculum classes in the Great Questions journey, which is that path through general education that you spoke about earlier. That's sort of been our newer, the antecedent project to Great Questions seminar. And the relationships that we've developed across disciplines with faculty in the training groups have been really instrumental in getting the course adopted into other degree plans. Whereas the student success course mandate was a mandate that came from administration on high, all of our efforts have been faculty led and owned, and really going to departments and making our case for why this is a good class and why it's appropriate for their majors, and just treating our colleagues with that kind of professional respect. And some of them said, why don't you come back to us in a year so we can think about it, and then leaving them alone, and then coming back in a year and making our case, and just being sort of like quietly persistent, but also really respectful of our colleagues' academic freedom and integrity to decide what's appropriate for their own students. So I think one of the things that's made this successful is that we've been cool to people. We've not tried to step on people's toes. We've been welcoming of anybody that wants to join the club, but we haven't tried to pressure anybody to change what they do.
Thank you, Ted. No, that's helpful. So folks, I have put in the chat a link to not only the Teagle NEH RFP, but also a section of the website that we call How and Why I Teach This Text. And I've also put a link to what TED is doing at Austin Community College, where you can see sample syllabi, student videos, other resources. And then Ted, do you want to just quickly tell the group about the Great Questions Foundation that you started?
Oh, sure. So we put together a group of community college faculty, largely community college faculty, and our goal was to design a list of 100 transformative texts that we think are instrumental for discussion-based education and general education, as a way of sort of starting this conversation with other community colleges, where you don't have to develop your own list. You can look at ours and see possible opportunities to redesign general education courses at your institution. And one of the things we're we're doing this summer is workshops, where we'll have one workshop that's focused on reading Plato's Republic alongside Mary Wollstonecraft and Lincoln Douglas debates and MLK's letter from a Birmingham jail. And then another seminar that's focused on, another workshop that's focused on Augustine's Confessions read alongside Baldwin's A Fire Next Time. And the goal of that is for faculty to collectively write study questions, these student-centered study questions, and explore how they might embed these texts within general education course syllabi at their institutions. And we'll be doing that this summer. So if you're a community college faculty member and you're interested in that, I urge you to visit our website to the workshop page. I can put that in the chat.
Thank you. Well, Anisha, I think what SUNY OCC is doing is also just so interesting. Now, you kind of took a similar approach to TED, where you decided to launch a student success course for your students that you call LBL 101. And you're also in the process of designing what you call the Enduring Questions pathway as an option for students to complete their gen ed distribution requirements or SUNY distribution requirements. And this, of course, is kind of grafted on top of the guided pathways work that you've been doing campus-wide. So can you tell us a little bit about, what were the considerations that informed your design of LBL 101, your student success course, how you built consensus for the common reading list that you have, how that list is being used, not only for LBL 101, but also for participating sections, enduring questions sections in your general education courses?
So we have a twin approach to the project and needs of our campuses. So it's at OCC we call the project the Enduring Questions project. So we have questions that are common to the LBL and to the Gen Ed courses. So this is what is nature of justice, human happiness, rights and liberties, nature of beauty, truth and friendship, and faculty cannot change the questions. And they come in a particular order. So, unlike TED, we don't have a set syllabus, a common syllabus, but we have set questions that guide the syllabus and guide the courses. So we took a twin approach at the project at OCC. So we have the Enduring Questions general education courses. And we trained faculty who were already teaching these gen ed courses, and now these courses are called the EQ or the Enduring Questions courses. And the common in all of these courses is just one reading, which is Plato's Cave. And then we have these set of enduring questions, and their syllabus is designed and the readings are designed according to these questions. So that is the sort of, this interdisciplinary model that we are running in, which is campus-wide. So we have world languages, ASL, Spanish, we'll have photography, we'll have math, this semester, psychology. So, this sort of extremely interdisciplinary model, but everyone is reading Plato's Cave week 1. So, when we have these meetings, we have, psychology professor saying, that I had a student in my class who was reading this in the English class. So, different perspectives of the reading. And why we are doing this, because at the core of our project is the understanding that liberal arts is very important for our student success. The other model that we have is what Lani was saying is the, this first year seminar or student success course, which is LBL 101. LBL 101 is different from the EQ course because it's completely guided by the core texts. So 100% of your syllabus is based on core text, but the faculty can choose what text they want to teach, but there are 3 readings that they must teach. In first 3 weeks are common, but after that they can choose what readings they want to choose that come out of this list. So those are the 2 approaches that we have right now on campus.
So, both Ted and Anisha, both of you, you've made the decision to offer a student success course, right? And usually these are, from what I've seen, usually they're taught by academic advisors, other professional staff. They're not necessarily led by faculty members. They don't necessarily have academic content. There's usually not a lot of reading. They're meant to be an orientation to the skills of a college student and the resources of your campus, right? How to use the library, how to access the counseling center, that kind of thing. So, those are all, that's still important information for brand new college students to have, right? And so you're still offering that information, but you're doing this while also incorporating these really wonderful readings along with close contact with faculty members. And so can you just, tell us about how you kind of make sure you're hitting both sides, essentially, like meeting these twin goals that you have within your student success course? What's the right allocation in terms of time in the classroom, for instance, or are there specific weeks, are there reading weeks and weeks where you go to the library to do a workshop, for instance?
Well, I can chime in about what we're doing, how we do the ACC. I mean, I think that a lot of what we do is it's contextualized in the transformative text discussion. So like one of the texts that we read, for example, is the Meno by Plato. And in the Meno, trying to struggle with, how do you learn something you don't already know? And learning to be comfortable with admitting that you don't know that thing. And we know that that's a really transformative experience for students to discuss that text in light of their first year of education at community college or perhaps anywhere for that matter, because of what they tell us in focus groups. We spend a lot of time talking with students and on-camera focus groups. At the end of each academic year, we invite a representative sample of students who've taken classes from a variety of different professors. And they tell us time and time again about how these books and the discussion of them through the lens of the study questions that we've designed help them to be more effective students. One of my favorite anecdotes in that regard is one student said, well, at the beginning of class, I came to class and I was really concerned that I was too stupid to succeed in college. And now I realize that everybody is stupid and I don't feel out of place. And that's just so Socratically wonderful. It's just sort of like acceptance of ignorance. Like, oh, most people are just pretending that they have it figured out. I see that. Okay, And so that was really nice to hear. And we've got those experiences time and time again. And we're right now, for first time in college students, we have just the quantitative success rate is really striking. Fall to spring persistence for our first time in college students who successfully complete the class is 98%, which is bananas. And I think that it's certainly that these numbers are difficult to draw causal conclusions, but I think it's really indicative of the kind of things that we see our students report in their focus group.
Just adding to what Ted said, I think it's contextualizing, and this is exactly what we are doing. So as part of our Title III grant guided pathways conversation on campus, everyone agreed that we need curricular coherence and we need a first year seminar. But this first year seminar needs to be rooted in academic somehow. So what we've done is that first 3 weeks, students go to the library, and we've had 5 courses for LBL pilot courses in fall, and right now we just have 1 that I'm teaching. So for first 3 weeks, students were taken to the library for sort of, early introduction to college. Last semester, I came up with a bingo, sort of an OCC bingo that everyone used in their classes, do this on campus, join a students club or, something like that. So I had this, so, that, took care of that. But as you said, we read Plato's Cave and then we read Douglas's narrative, which are very important because, then students can make connections between importance of education. We have financial aid coming and talking to our students in our classrooms, which was really helpful. Last semester, all of us did that, and students were thanking us for doing that because they got one-on-one with financial aid folks, and this is something that they can't wrap their heads around first year on campus. So in first 3 weeks, we have built in these sort of basic, go to the library, financial aid will come and see you. And we have contextualized this with the readings that are happening in class. We also have a note, advising note. that because, we are in Syracuse, we have a lot of first generation students. We have a lot of non-traditional and also students who may not have gone to high school in United States. So we have an advising note for another course, which if they need more basic college success strategies, then they should be advised to take that course. The other thing that we managed to do, pull it off, was that we have 20 students in our classes, and we are the academic advisor for all of those 20 students. And that has worked out very well. So, our registration from fall to spring was really good because, your advisee is right in front of you, you're meeting them every day. So that worked very well with us.
That's great. Yeah, well, Mark, at Lynn Benton Community College, you have what you call, oh, Andy, I see that.
Very sorry, I just wanted to ask one quick question of Anisha. Anisha, you mentioned that your principle of coherence is around the questions rather than the shared texts. I'm just curious, when as faculty work together developing courses organized around those questions, do you find that certain texts arise that multiple faculty choose to use? I'm just curious if that's the case, and if so, if you could give an example or two. I mean, you mentioned Frederick Douglass as a follow-up on Plato. Are there other examples like that?
MLK speeches would be an example that a lot of faculty have been using on LBL that we are looking at right now. For EQ, because, we had this really interdisciplinary group. As I said, we have, psychology, history of art, and, now we'll have math folks, having them in a room. What was really wonderful was at a point, all of them wanted to use Darwin in their classes for what is truth. So, that was really wonderful. But yes, we do see a lot of common readings. Of course, with, anthropology and history and literature, we see some of the faculty members leaning towards sort of pre-modern, not so contemporary readings. And then you have, contemporary historians. We've also, in our pilot courses, included readings on Native American. We sit on Onondaga Hill. We took students to the Scano Center, which is the, they don't like the term museum. They use the term center for the history of Native Americans here in this region. So looking at our syllabus, a lot of faculty members have also decided to use that.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks.
So yeah, thanks, Anisha. So Mark, Lynn Benton Community College, right? So you have what you call the Destination Graduation course for your brand new incoming students. And you have really interesting plans to embed a new module organized around meditations. So tell us about that, along with your plans to engage students with transformative text in subsequent courses that they have to take while they're students at LBCC, right? There's a communications class, a writing class that most of your students are expected to take, along with other gen ed courses that students take. And I think the faculty at LBCC have a really interesting vision for how they want to engage students with core texts while they're with you.
Well, first thing I want to say is thank you, Lonnie and Andrew, as well as the Teagle Foundation, for bringing community colleges into this work. Because we do represent about 40% of undergraduates in this country, and sometimes we're overlooked with initiatives like this. We are trying to create ladders of upward mobility and more equity in society, and it's so nice to be able to be provided the resources in order to create the rich learning experience that so many privileged students are able to get, and unfortunately some underprivileged individuals are not able to access. Lynn Benton Community College is in the Mid-Willamette Valley of Oregon, and something that's really helped us be successful while working under the planning grant that we currently have from the Teagle Foundation is the Guided Pathways model. We've been implementing this model for about the past 5 years, and that has allowed us to make Cornerstone an integral part of the first year experience for transfer students, not only in the liberal arts, but also STEM. So we have Destination Graduation, which is our college's freshman seminar course. And we're also incorporating Cornerstone currently into our English composition class, our public speaking and argument and critical discourse classes, as well as 2 humanities courses. I think it's really important to just kind of back up and talk about the process of how we got to where we currently are. Because when we first received this planning grant, we were incredibly excited. And then we realized how daunting of a task it was that we were about to undertake. So we had a couple of goals. First, bring together numerous stakeholders on our campus. Second, create a list of transformative texts. And then finally, figure out a way in order to create a meaningful learning experience for students. So the first thing that our Dean for Arts, Social Sciences, and Humanities did was recruit a group of seasoned, highly passionate instructors from art, music, writing, and communication that could create a core team that could then go out and develop relationships with the stakeholders that we need to bring together. And the really nice thing about our college is we are fairly small, so there aren't many degrees of separations between the numerous silos at our schools. So we were able to use personal relationships to reach out, to communicate what Cornerstone was, what the vision is that we're trying to implement at LB, and then bring people into the process. So we were able to recruit the lead faculty member for our first year seminar, the lead faculty member for our for our Center for Teaching Excellence, as well as the department chairs for biology and business, which represent the two largest majors on our campus. The next thing we did, and this was advice we received from Ted with an excellent workshop he delivered, was become good friends with advisors, because they're the ones who actually send students to your classes. And one thing that we innovated while delivering our presentation of Cornerstone to advisors was we actually asked everyone in that meeting, what book made a significant impact on you during your undergrad experience? And it was amazing to see how much people opened up and also how excited people started to become again about the process of implementing Cornerstone. So once we brought the numerous stakeholders together, we then went through the process of creating large workshops that were open to everybody on our campus community to start to develop a list of transformative texts. And I got to tell you, we ended up with well over 200. So it was a large, diverse number, but then we got into this process of thinking, okay, how are we going to practically implement this? Which means we had to start asking tough questions. And the tough question we asked was, okay, if we're going to use any of these books as transformative texts in several sections, how are we going to create resources that can be shared with other faculty? And when people had to stop and think, okay, I'm not just coming up with the name of a text that I'm going to be using, I actually have to be able to develop resources and implement this thing in the course and then share those resources with colleagues, it helped them to think a little bit more practically about what specific text would be used in our first year classes. So ultimately, we arrived at Marcus Aurelius's Meditations for our destination graduation class. That was an idea that actually came out of people sharing what transformative text made a big impact on them during their undergrad experiences. That almost was like the top book in every single discussion we had. And when we started to examine why it had a positive impact on us during our undergrad years, we realized, wow, this is something that would definitely benefit community college students, talking about people that you have learned from over your life. Understanding the basics of Stoic philosophy. I mean, how powerful it is for a new student at a community college to examine this idea that, hey, there are some things you have control over, there are other things you don't have control over. Something you're supposed to be doing during this transformative college experience is developing self-mastery. So that's how we got Meditations into destination graduation. For writing, one of our core team members took on the incredibly challenging task of teaching our first Cornerstone class. And she used Pygmalion's George Bernard Shaw and specifically decided to use it to examine the intersections of language, power, and gender. I'm incorporating chapter 2 of John Stuart Mill's On Liberty in my argument and critical discourse class, because one of the key lessons I'm trying to help students understand is that it is very important to recognize that people think differently, and we all benefit from understanding a wide diversity of viewpoints. Clearly that's a mindset, and those are the habits of mind and heart that I am hoping students will take with them into future classes in their life beyond college. And then the humanities, we have our division dean, who also was a literature professor for over 2 decades at a small liberal arts college up in Portland. She is going to be teaching Homer's The Odyssey, but also tying it with the 1619 project under the theme of origin stories, wedding the classical and the contemporary. So we're very excited about where we're heading moving forward, and I'm looking forward to reporting back to you on how it goes.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping you can see right away that the basic program model that we're looking to support under the Cornerstone Learning for Living initiative, where you create a common intellectual experience for incoming students and a coherent pathway through general education. You know, I think you can see there are very different ways in which it can be implemented on your campus, depending on your resources, depending on how your curriculum is configured, depending on faculty interest. Now, all three of you, your project started life with a planning grant, right? So Mark mentioned that he's currently in the planning phase. In the case of Ted and Anisha's projects, they're now in what we call the implementation phase. So, but you know, I think, you know, to me it is salient that you all started off at the planning grant. There's a lot of just really important steps that you all undertook as planning grantees with, you know, sort of building a constituency for what you want to do, right? So engaging your faculty colleagues, sort of having sort of the time and space and resources for an informal set of meetings to just make sure that there's enough interest to pursue this collaboratively, doing the design work for particularly sort of the first year student success course in each of your settings, making sure that course is approved and sort of ideally even written into degree plans, early outreach with academic advisors. Ted, thank you for reminding about how important that can be. What else did you see as important tasks that you accomplished in the planning grant? And, you know, sort of looking back now at that experience, is there something that you might do differently, right? If you had to do this again, would you make a different use of your planning grant resources? Or even thinking in the case of Austin Community College and Lynn Benton, I'm sorry, and SUNY OCC, I mean, something that you would do differently in the early stages of your implementation.
Ted, do you want to answer first?
You go, I'll go after you.
I mean, if I really had the power to do that, Lani, I'd make sure there wasn't COVID, because we were doing this during the peak of the pandemic. And as I was listening to Mark, you know, we were not able to get as many stakeholders involved. We have a schools model at OCC now, which was part of the Title III guided pathways. And I wish we knew we had people that were involved from School of Business and, you know, some faculty from science who were interested, but because of COVID, we were unable to meet in person. Lani very much knows those dilemmas that we were having. We couldn't have any meeting in person, and people, you know, the contacts just fell through. So I think that is something that we would have done really very, very differently. People were having Zoom fatigue. It was very difficult to be, you know, energetic and interested in a project. So I wish, other than that, we contacted all the stakeholders. We made sure that they were involved, as Ted said, you know, not on anybody's toes, being respectful, if possible, you know, emailing people personally, calling them, explaining them about the project. One thing that we did, which was really helpful, was we met Ted and Melinda Zook. And we emailed them again and again with our questions, and we had them over Zoom to talk to our core team. So that really helped. Just looking at what the previous grantees had done with the project really helped us plan our own list and what model we wanted to take. Other than that, I think we would have done the same things. If COVID wasn't that bad, we could have had more stakeholders on campus and, you know, more interest.
Something that I know that all the three of you have thought about with your colleagues and have had to navigate are sort of perceptions of students' academic preparation. And, varying levels of concern about students' abilities, right, to engage with these texts at the level at which you want them to engage. And so can you talk a little bit about how you've navigated that? I mean, particularly in the context of a student success course, those are courses that are open to students regardless of their academic preparation, right? And so how have you been able to make sure that students are engaged, when you have that context? And then Andy, I know that it looks like you wanted to jump in.
No, it's fine. I said a little while ago, I just wanted to make the passing comment that one of the themes I'm hearing from all three of you is that this kind of work is a benefit for faculty as well as for students, and that you're discovering faculty friends you didn't know you had, and learning from one another and energizing one another. And I believe that that's really true. And I just think an underline ought to be put under that point, because faculty might initially feel that this kind of work is onerous or depleting in some way. And of course, it's hard work, but it has its rewards in building community. And I think that's really important to say. So I just wanted to amplify that point.
Yeah, very much so. And I also think that working on something that's kind of programmatic, faculty can see the impact that they're collectively having, and it thereby makes your individual contribution more meaningful, because you're a part of a whole that's working towards something which you all believe is good and worthwhile. And so when we see our focus group data, for example, of students talking about, I just got done recording videos with students who've taken our class 4, sometimes 5 years ago. And faculty are going to be able to watch this video and see their students from 4 or 5 years ago who had transferred and graduated from four-year institutions, who have meaningful full-time employment, reflect on how that curriculum got them started on their path. And that gives your life kind of a meaning that it's difficult to see how you're a part of a larger whole if you're just focused on teaching your own curriculum in your own class, in your own silo. I think that community part is very much especially for part-time faculty. It's tough to justify the sacrifice that you make as a part-time faculty at a community college. And I think being a part of something like this is especially impactful for adjunct faculty who make a tremendous sacrifice coming back every semester to teach for very little, and oftentimes with very little respect, to see that you've got some larger impact. But one of the motivating things that got us started, and this is speaking to Lonnie's question about student preparedness, is there are some people at our institution who are extremely skeptical about whether or not community college faculty could handle reading text in philosophy and epic poetry, and especially with the mathematical side of this. And I think that there's a sort of healthy anger that animated a lot of faculty with regards to that response that made us push forward on this. Because as Mark indicated, about almost half of Americans are undergraduates are at community colleges. And if the perception is that almost half of American undergraduates can't handle reading a transformative text, then that's a serious indictment on our democratic project as such. And I think many of us are sort of animated by refusing to accept that, because we have experienced otherwise in our own classrooms, because we had been doing this stuff independent of one another for many years. And it was in part that brought us together to do it collectively.
So this is something that we are dealing with right now. Last week, as we are rolling out the LBL training for our faculty, and not about the faculty, but questions about students and their preparedness, as Lani, said. So, faculty member commented that are our students really ready to admire these Western texts. And there is some reality to this at OCC. We are in central New York, we are a sanctuary city, and the reality is that a lot of our students are extremely disadvantaged, and they need extra help reading any text. But that doesn't mean that they can't appreciate these texts and they are not interested. So, I think these are two very, very different conversations. Are they ready? That it's different from will they appreciate these texts. Another point that I want to make while I elaborate on the student preparedness is that we've also focused on a lot of non-Western texts, because I come from a non-Western tradition. I'm a historian, who studies South Asia. So I was quite insistent on the fact that we must include a lot of non-Western texts on our list, and we should encourage our faculty to engage with them and our students too. And we've had wonderful experience. This semester, my students think that Ibn Battuta was the toughest reading that they had to do because of a lot of non-English terms that were there in the reading. But I had two students from the class who said, no, we loved it. That was our favorite reading, because one student grew up in Dubai and the other one in Jordan. And they said that we have Ibn Battuta malls and Ibn Battuta market. And when we saw that reading in a classroom, we were so excited because we could relate to something. But I had these other students that couldn't relate to Battuta at all. So, it's very interesting. And I always say this because I'm at OCC with this diverse group of students. We have different experiences and they bring their diverse experiences to classroom, which is the most fascinating and most encouraging part of teaching LBL courses here. And yes, some of our students need extra help with basic English, and that's why we have that little advising note. And we are parallelly running another course that will help them. We speak to their advisors, and then they can come back to LBL, or they can do these two courses parallelly, which will help them. But the argument that students are not ready to appreciate this course is untrue.
I'd just like to add one more thing.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
Teaching a cornerstone class can be incredibly intimidating for instructors. And I think it would be wise for instructors to share that openly with the students and say, I'm going to struggle through this process with you, and we're all going to grow and benefit from that collective struggle.
I love that. Thank you. So something that I would love for any of you to comment on is, to what extent have you found that you need to respond to concerns about the transferability of these courses, particularly for the gen ed courses in particular? Has that been an issue? Is that something that's raised? Is it a source of concern? And then for folks in the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A for us.
I think one of the things that makes this approach really successful in addressing those concerns is that we're not creating new courses, we're repurposing already existing courses that transfer. It's more about a change of pedagogical orientation than it is about creating new courses. Creating a new course within the context of a community college is quite a daunting and perhaps futile task in a place like Texas, where a community college can't simply create a new course. It needs to be something that gets in the lower division course manual, which every community college would then be eligible to teach. So good luck. It's a challenge to do. They're trying to pare those courses down rather than add new things to them, and precisely to address that issue of transferability. But it's definitely the best approach, I think, is to repurpose current existing courses.
So we did create a new course, and it was extremely difficult, but it was part of our guided pathways, because our curriculum were going through review and SUNY is going through a review. So that was much easier to do, only because these things were happening. Otherwise, I don't know, but it has worked in our benefit, because our major partner institutes where our students transfer have similar courses, and they're going to transfer. So it'll eventually work in our favor and favor of our students.
Yeah, and the LBL 101 course, right? The new course, Anisha, that you're describing, that I mean, in your campus, it's intended to meet, depending on students' degree plans, it's intended to meet the student success requirement that you've instituted, but it also carries SUNY Humanities elective credit now as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I said, as SUNY is changing its requirements for gen ed courses, we are also, they have a new requirement, which is the social justice, diversity, and inclusivity requirement. We are also applying for this course to meet that requirement. And we are quite sure that it'll happen. And that's why we are focusing also on a lot of non-Western readings to meet that requirement.
Interesting. Well, you know, I mean, I think that this issue of sort of ensuring the transferability of these courses, even as there are changes to reading assignments and perhaps to the pedagogy, right? So moving away from a lecture and textbook-based approach to teaching gen ed to something that's focused, that's oriented more towards discussion of transformative text and an emphasis on discussion in the classroom. There's, you know, what you're describing to me is, you know, something that we think about in terms of sustainability, right? I mean, so what are ways in which the grant can support meaningful changes to curriculum that faculty, right, are motivated to keep going in the post-grant period because they see the benefits to students and they see they see the benefits for themselves, right, for their own sort of professional development and for the collegiality and the community that they're building with their colleagues at the institution. So there are a number of things that you're doing, and one of them is as basic as making sure that you're not necessarily getting into the business of, right, proposing new courses. It's making changes to your existing curricular assets. There are also sort of grant-supported investments in faculty professional development that you want to find ways to continue in the post-grant period. And so can you tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about how to keep your good work moving even once the formal grant period ends?
I have a very practical suggestion, and that is providing faculty with release time. Many faculty at community colleges have heavy teaching loads. Our core team typically teaches 4 to 5 classes per instructor per term. So just having a little bit of time away from teaching to focus on this incredibly rewarding project would go a long way towards sustainability.
So we have course release 2, and we also teach typically 5-5. But also making these courses like we did with LBL. And I know it's a very, very difficult task for most community colleges. As I said, maybe the environment was beneficial for us is to make it a permanent offering for incoming freshmen. So that is what LBL is now. All students must take it. So, you know, that just makes it, you know, it's going to be there forever. So we've created something that's going to last.
One of the things that we're doing with our Great Questions Journey courses, and those courses aren't based on a common syllabus. It's a very much pedagogical approach where faculty members pick a core text or core texts that will constitute roughly 40% of the semester in a discussion-based environment, and then they embed that into their own curriculum. One of the things that we've seen that sort of speaks to the sustainability of this sort of liberal arts pedagogical approach is the faculty report back to us in surveys who've taken our training for Humanities 1301 Great Questions about how that's helped them do things differently in their own classes. So there are these sort of formal, like the formal structure of the Great Questions Journey classes where it's supported by our Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning. So that's been the sort of sustainable financial piece of this puzzle, that we have we have a division of the institution that is continuing to support faculty development in this regard, and we feel very fortunate for that partnership. But it's also the sort of informal ways in which the program continues to be sustainable through faculty addressing how they teach their own courses differently, and are more encouraged to do discussion-based study of transformative texts that aren't necessarily part of the journey structure, but just sort of independently. So that's been really neat to see that it's having sort of tangential benefits too.